in constant sorrow all through his day. I am the man of constant sorrow. I've seen trouble all my day. I bid farewell to old Missouri, the place where I was born and raised, the place where he was born and raised. For 6 long years I've been in trouble, no pleasure here on earth I found. For I'm down to right. Oh, I messed it up. Have no friends to help me now. He has no friends to help him now. It's fare thee well, my own true lover. I never expect to see you again, for I'm bound to ride that northern railroad. Perhaps I'll die upon this train. Perhaps he'll die upon this train. You can bury me in some big valley for many years where I may lay. Then you may learn to love another while I am sleeping in my grave, while he is sleeping in his grave. Maybe your friends think I'm just a stranger, my face you never see no more. But there is one promise that was given. I'll meet you on God's golden shore. He'll meet you on God's golden shore. Got that close. I don't care. Throw tomatoes. It's all right. I'm okay with it. Somebody asked, why aren't you playing the world's finest mandolin ever built by a human? Well, I just did. And it didn't help me at all. I just screwed the song up anyway. But there it is. That's what it looks like presently. During my hiatus, I am planning to put some more finish on this and touch up the little tiny detail that just needs touching up. And then I'll consider it finished. Right now, I'm just playing it. But I'm real happy with it. I really do like the mandolin a lot. I'm glad I didn't sell it, even for that ridiculous offer that I had. Good morning, everybody. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop, if you didn't know that already. First order of business is to say thank you for all those wonderful, wonderful comments you gave Cash on the video yesterday. Yes, Cash is going to be a talent, I think. That's one of the reasons I took him under my wing. I would see him come to the jam sessions, and quite honestly, nobody could play with him. I mean, that's the truth. His timing was horrendous. It was just impossible to play with. It was just impossible. He had his own sense of timing, and he had been taking lessons at a local place, I'll just say that, and he had been taking lessons for 2 or 3 years, and I think 3 years, like since he was 6, and he's 9, you know. And why they didn't try to correct any of that timing stuff, I have no idea. But he is enjoying these new lessons in the new format that I'm putting him in. And I think he's going to turn out to be a heck of a talent. I really do. Here's my prediction. And you guys will see this if it happens. And I'm pretty sure it's going to happen. My prediction is that in 6 months to a year, he'll be playing stuff I can't play. And yeah, I've seen it so many times before. That's why I'm making that prediction. And he seems like he's got that talent. By the way, this is just a side thing. I'm going to throw it out there for anybody that is giving lessons to a child or a young, or anybody really. It doesn't really matter. I give the same little spiel to everybody that I give lessons to, but especially I think it's impactful to a child who's just first learning. There's a couple of things here, so bear with me for just a second. First of all, I make them understand my golden rule. Now, this golden rule really applies mostly to very beginners, people that are just starting to learn, okay? It's a golden rule, though, that I tell them, and I make them repeat it back each time we have a lesson. I say, what's the golden rule, you know? Okay, the golden rule is, now, if you're left-handed, this will be opposite, okay? So just bear with me on this. I'm doing it for a right-handed person. I said, the golden rule is you never let this hand, which is your note hand, mess up this hand, which is the rhythm hand. In other words, the rhythm hand rules. Rhythm, your timing is everything, you know, and I give them the example that, you know, your timing is your house. I mean, it's your foundation, it's your walls, it's your roof, it's your house. That's your timing. This hand is the decoration. This is the pictures on the wall. This is what makes it look pretty and makes it even possibly sound pretty. But you know, pretty ain't nothing unless you got some place to hang the pictures on the wall, you know, and this is the house. So that's example number one. Example number two on timing, and I tell every student this, is now, you know, and I usually tell them this maybe a couple lessons in, you know, after they've kind of started getting it a little bit. Okay, so now I say, now picture yourself, you're on a stage, you've got 100 people in the audience. And they're listening to you, boy, and they're listening close because they want to hear what you're going to do, you know. And I said, let's suppose that you make a mistake with your note hand and you make, you know, you miss a note or something in your song. Well, I'm here to tell you that 98 people out of 100 probably won't even notice that. You know, there will be a couple of people that will notice it, and those couple of people are probably, you know, musicians, real musicians, and probably very good musicians, and they heard that one or two notes that you missed. I said, so this hand doesn't have that big of an impact when it comes to a problem on stage. I said, now, suppose you're playing in front of those 100 people and you make a timing mistake with this hand, and now you're completely out of time. Well, 98 out of 100 people are going to hear that. They're going to notice that. You know why they're going to notice it? Because they're clapping like this with you. They're humming to themselves. They're singing to themselves. They're patting their leg. They're snapping their fingers. They're in time with you. And when you make a timing mistake, 98 out of 100 of them are going to notice it. And you might say, well, why didn't the other two people notice it? And the reason is because they were talking. If they wouldn't have been talking, they'd have heard it too. So anyway, those are good examples that you can give young students, and it makes an impact on them, and they do get it. It lets them know how important timing is. Okay, moving on. But again, thanks again for all that wonderful feedback for Cash. I'll be playing music with him this evening at a jam session at the Senior Center at the St. James area. Let's see. The next thing is I've put another link to my son's channel, Homestead Horsemanship. I updated the link, and it's the link is Bringing Oliver Home. So if you get a chance, and if you don't know what Oliver is a big old Clydesdale horse, except that he's not really big, and he's not that old, but he looks real old because he hasn't been taken care of. His backbone is sticking up that high, and his hip bones are sticking up, and he's not in good shape, and my son is going to nurse him back to health. So, and that's all thanks to the viewers, by the way. My son didn't have the money to go buy that horse. That horse was fairly expensive, even though they were basically letting him die right there in the pasture, you know, pretty much. Anyway, so he's getting him to the vet and all that stuff and getting shots and everything that he has to do to get the horse back on the road. But again, thanks to the viewers. Let's see. While he was down there bringing that horse back, he saw Bill and Mona Webb of my channel, or they started out on my channel, let's say it that way. They now watch my channel and my son's channel, and they met up with my son down in Texas. And they just got a new toy. Take a look at the new toy they just got. That's quite a toy right there. Bill and Mona got themselves a trike there. Boy, that thing's nice. I would like to have one like that. I could handle that, I think. That the two-wheel thing these days, I'm not so sure I could handle the two-wheel thing. But no, I can ride them, but that right there looks comfortable. That really looks nice. So congratulations, Bill and Mona there. And I hope I'm saying that Mona is right. I get names messed up so bad, but I'm going to my memory, and you know how good that is. Not very good. Oh my gosh. Moving right along, Jerry McFarland, he had a little note here that he sent to me, and he says, "You're absolutely right." And then he goes on to say, "A fork in your tire is as rare as a guitar neck overbowed, and it sucks canal water," which is what I usually say. It sucks canal water. And he says, and it sucks canal water as bad as a two-way truss rod. And so you might think, well, what does he mean by all that? Well, here's what he means. A fork in the road. What was it Yogi Berra said? Didn't he say, when you come to the fork in the road, take it? Well, if he had taken that one, he wouldn't have it stuck in his tire. Anyway, I thought that was pretty good. Oh, okay, moving back, let's see here. I've already started work on tonight's video, and before I tell you about that, let me just explain what happened last week. You know, last week's video, I had intended and had it ready to go out at about 6 o'clock in the evening. Well, you know, the Rosa curse. For whatever reason, that video was uploading so slow compared to my normal uploads, because normally my uploads are pretty fast, really. Well, that one was going really, really slow. It was taking twice as long as it should have taken, and of course, wouldn't you know, right in the middle of it, right around 59% or somewhere, the electric went off. So ordinarily, that's not that big a problem because the electric comes on fairly quickly. I've got ins with the electric company, and they come out and fix me up pretty quickly. I've helped them out a number of times, and so they give me really, really good service. Well, anyway, they got the electric back on pretty quick. Well, would you not know, the Rosa curse again, it would not restart the video like normally it does. It normally just starts right back up from where it took off. I let it sit there for 30 minutes, and it never changed 1 percentage point. So I finally said, well, got to cancel it. So I had to cancel it and start it all over. Now, by this time, it's like 7 o'clock in the evening, and it was uploading really, really, really slow. And then I honestly fell asleep in the middle of the upload, and then when I woke up, it was like 11 o'clock at night. So that's why it didn't get released till 11 o'clock at night, and I know you don't even care, but I just wanted to let you know that I don't intend to do those kinds of things. They just happen to me. And tonight might be the same thing. You just never know. But I spent all afternoon yesterday working on the next video, and the next video is going to be on the Plastic Bridge Gibson. And I think it's quite a good video. I think you'll really enjoy it. And anyway, it's down to 1 hour and 15 minutes at the moment, but that's only draft one. I have to go through it again. You always have to go through them twice, because trust me, you'll see things you thought, oh man, I screwed that up. I should have done this differently. So I have to go through it again. And then I generally have to watch it again to make sure it's all good. So I've got at least probably 3 to 4 more hours work on it before I can turn it loose to you guys. And that's, of course, then it has to upload it, and who knows how long that'll take. So anyway, all that rambling just to tell you that there should be a video coming out tonight. I hope it's early, but you just never know. Okay, getting right into the questions. Man, do we have a lot of questions. We got 21 numbers, and some of the numbers have 2 questions or more. So here we go. We got a lot of questions. We may have trouble getting through all this. The first one I have down is from Thomas Armstrong, and he says, enjoyed watching one of your violin repairs and was wondering why sound posts for violins but not other acoustic instruments. Seems like someone would have invented some kind of an angled clamping device that could place the post in the right or correct spot first time with minimal adjustments. Maybe it's easier process than it looks. Well, no, it's not an easy process, and your questions are valid. I have addressed these before, by the way, but the reason the other instruments don't have a sound post is the different technology. The bowed violin, now this is me talking, by the way. I have never seen this written anywhere, but I just know from experience and from doing it, this is why I say it's the way it is, okay? I just want you to understand that. This is not coming from an encyclopedia. It's just coming from me. So the answer that I'm giving you is that the reason violins have a sound post and the others don't, it's the technology difference. The technology being the bow. You're using the bow and you hear that long vibration. It goes as you're doing this instead of a pluck, 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 and that long vibration sends that vibration through that sound post into the back. And that works for a violin. When you pluck it, it's very harsh. It's much harsher than it, like I have put sound posts in mandolins, mostly because the mandolin top was caving in. It was a cheap mandolin or whatever, or maybe it wasn't even, there was one case where it wasn't even a cheap mandolin, but the top was caving in because they carved it too thin. And so I just put a sound post in there because they wanted a cheap and dirty fix, and the cheap and dirty fix is put a sound post in there. Well, anyway, it does not do anything good for the sound of a mandolin when you put a sound post in there. It's all I can tell you. Why they don't have a device to put it in there is because there's no black and white standard. There's no black and white perfect way to do it. Every single violin is different. Every one of them's carved different. The shapes are different. The sound hole size is different, etc. and so forth. It's just different. And so you just pretty much got to do it manually. It's not crazy hard for me because I've done it so much, but I would say your average person trying to do it, it would be almost a nightmare if you've never done it before. It's just because it's just not easy. But I've learned how to do it, and I've got my methods, and I can usually do it in sometimes 5 minutes and sometimes a lot less. It just depends on the instrument. Okay, moving on. 2 yards is the username. It says, it seems I'm always chasing high frets. If I fix one, then immediately open a can of worms for high frets down the neck. If a string is fretted out, is it the next fret down the neck the culprit? Seems like always happens on 9.5-inch radius necks. Thanks for your assistance. Well, honestly, I don't feel like I have that problem, but the only way I can explain it is that they have to be level. They got to be level. So this is the most important tool to do a fret job. This tool right here. All the other stuff is decoration again, kind of like the pictures on the wall. This is your house. You got to get it level. I don't care what anybody tells you. You got to get it level, and you got to. And that doesn't necessarily mean that every single fret is perfectly flat from here to here. What it means is they're all level in their relative respective areas. So in other words, you can feather them out. That's why you can, when you accidentally cut the nut a little bit low, and I mean just a little bit. I don't mean like you've really screwed it up. I mean like you just barely get it a hair too low and it just barely touches this fret. Well, you can go ahead and feather that out. You can do it in this area and feather it out slowly and it'll be just fine. You've got to get them level though. And they have to be level to one from the other. And yes, your answer is yes, that it is usually the very next fret. In other words, you're noting between, I'm just make this up so you can get the understanding. You're noting between the 5th and 6th frets, so your 7th fret will be the high fret then, generally speaking. Could there be a different one that could be buzzing? Yeah, it can happen, but generally it's the next fret. Okay, moving on. George in Montana, is it really necessary to polish the frets, or is that just a cosmetic thing? Well, quite honestly, George, I'm copying my buddy old Randy Schardiger. Randy likes to polish those frets up and make them look beautiful, and so I copied Randy on that. And I'm just being honest. I'm not going to lie to you and say it was my idea, because it wasn't. I saw Randy do it quite a bit, and Randy's a good guy, and so anyway, that's where I got that from. Bob K. And by the way, I didn't answer your question. Is it cosmetic or is it necessary? In my opinion, it's cosmetic, because I didn't do it for years and years and years and years and years, and I never had a problem. But I do sand it with 600 sandpaper or 800 sandpaper. By the way, we'll get to talking about that here in a minute. There's another question about that. But anyway, yeah, I just sand it with super fine sandpaper, and then that's really all you have to do, I think. But I do think you have to do that. I don't think you can just file them with the flat file and or the recrowning file. I don't think that's good enough. You got to put the sandpaper to it, in my opinion. And then after you do that, that's as far as you have to take it, but then polishing them is cosmetic, in my opinion. But it probably does help a little bit, especially if you're a real string bender and that sort of thing. If you're, especially in electric, I would say it probably helps even more. Bob K. I am going to sand the bottom of my saddle to get the action at the 12th fret down to 90 thousandths on the bass side, 80 thousandths on the treble side. What grit of 6-inch disc sandpaper do you recommend for the job? I am using a combination belt disc sander. P.S. Any chance the felled walnut tree could be sawn for making guitar backs and sides? And then he went on to say, also, Cash has the makings of a great singer. Thanks for all you do. Well, Bob K., you know, I don't know that it really makes all that much difference what sandpaper you put on your disc. I wouldn't use real coarse. I mean, I wouldn't use 60 grit or something. I think you could probably get by with 80, but I think your optimal sandpaper for that purpose would probably be in the neighborhood of around 100, something like that. If you get it too fine, it actually does a lot more burning than it does cutting. So around 100, I think, would be really, really good. I think you can get by with 80, but below that, you know, like 60 or 50 or something, that would be too coarse, I think. So I hope that helps you on that. Regarding the walnut trees, actually, I may talk about that a little bit further down, so I'll just wait on that one. I'll probably be answering your question on that. But I don't plan to make guitars out of them, though, unfortunately. I mean, I'm just not planning to make many more guitars anyway, so there you go. Jim F. Jerry, do your custom guitar tops and backs have radius? The backs have a radius, the tops are flat. They are flat top guitars. And regardless what all the forum gurus will tell you, most of the flat top guitars are flat top. That's why they call them flat top guitars. How do I know that? 40 years. That's how I know that. But you go to these forums and they just got to tell you everything under the sun, that they know better, you know. But sorry, it isn't true. Bill Diedrich, with all the walnut trees you have there, I bet you have plenty of squirrels living there. Second question, have you ever met or played with another great Missouri musician, Bob Minner? And he's a great guitar player that has played with Tim McGraw for over 30 years. Yes, I knew Bob very well. And I knew Bob before he started with Tim McGraw. So we go way back. About 10 years ago, roughly, just about the time I started the YouTube channel, or maybe a little before. I think it was before, actually. Bob called me up, and he was, of course, playing for Tim at that time. And he says, I want you to build me a custom mandolin. And I said, okay. So I just took him on his word. I didn't ask him for a deposit or anything, because we're friends. And I started building the mandolin. And when I got it done, I called him and told him I had it done. He goes, he says, I'm sorry, but I can't take it. I thought, well, doggone it anyway. He had just bought he got a chance to buy a pre-war, I don't remember now, D35 or D28 or something. I don't remember what it was. But anyway, it was a real nice guitar, and he paid a lot of money for it, and he didn't have the money. And I said, don't worry about it, Bob. So I sold it to the next guy in line, and it was no big deal. But anyway, so I do know Bob very well. Roy Livingston. Oh, about the trees though, and about the squirrels. Actually, we do have a lot of squirrels, but honestly, they're not so big into the walnuts as they are into the acorns. Now, they will take the walnuts too. Don't get me wrong, and they do work on the walnuts as well. But boy, they love acorns. So they seem to be more into the acorns than the walnuts. And we do have hickory nuts also, by the way. Let's see. Moving on, Roy Livingston. Did you make your own sawmill? Can you make a video of you using it? Yes, and I have on both cases. So if you just type in RSW sawmill, you'll find quite a few videos on it, actually. I think there's at least 4, maybe more than that, videos on me using the sawmill. And I plan to make some more videos of me using it during my hiatus from working on instruments, which will be coming up before too long. Okay, Dale Pfaff, or I'm saying it like that, it's P-F-A-F-F, so I'm saying Dale Pfaff. I think the P would be silent, but I don't know that for sure. Watch every day, that is my banjo and mandolin that you have on the shelf. He says the mandolin needs a setup, antler saddle and scalloping on the end of the fretboard, and the banjo just goes out of tune a lot when I'm playing it. So Dale, we'll fix you up, and you are the last 2 that are going to get done during this this phase of the work, I guess. And then I'm going to take my break right after those. So I'll get those 2 done, and then I'm taking my break. And it doesn't sound like those 2 are going to take me very long. So hopefully I'll get them done. I don't want to say next week, but I hope I will. I hope I do get them done next week. The stock options report is the next username. Is cutting the fret slots too deep and relying on glue to hold them in bad, or should I leave the slot grooves more shallow and risk that they don't sit level? I've not had success with the second method. It requires a lot of filing. Well, at the risk of sounding like a smart aleck, I mean, because I don't know how else to answer this, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be a smart aleck. You just need to cut them to the right depth. I don't cut them so deep that you're cutting through the fretboard, but I cut them, where they're, I don't know, 10, 20 thousandths deeper than the fret itself, something like that, probably 10 thousandths deeper than the fret. And I don't have any problem with it, so I don't know. I've never experienced the problem you're talking about. I don't want to cut them so deep that I'm, going to break the fretboard or anything like that. But on the other hand, I want them just a little deeper than the fret slot itself. There's ways to measure it. It's a little complicated sometimes, but you should be able to accomplish that, I think. So I hope that answers your question, because I don't really know how to answer it other than the way I just did. All right, the next one's a long one here. Mike Curtin, I think he's got at least a 2-parter here, if not 3. He says, I don't mean to give you any grief. Your expertise and the efforts make on these videos have helped me out quite a bit. Again, I say thank you. In a video last week, you mentioned that the sandpaper you use is 800 grit per square inch. The grit number is per linear inch, not per square inch. Well, I got to beg to differ with you, Mike. I looked it up again this morning, and the way it works out is that's how many grits fits through 1 square inch sieve. They use a sieve, and however many grits fit through that 1 square inch, that's what they call it. So 800 pieces of particle fit through the square. And then you went on to use some math there that's not right, in my opinion. You said that they would, if it was 800, they'd be 35 thousandths in diameter. There is no way. You could never fit 800 pieces of grit that were 35 thousandths of a square inch. I mean, 35 thousandths of an inch in diameter. You could never fit 800 of them in 1 inch. There'd be no way. You might get 200, you might get 100. I don't know how many, but you'll never get 800, because I know how big 35 thousandths is. That's pretty big, actually. That would be large grit. That would be something in the neighborhood of 60 grit or maybe 80 grit. I'm really not sure. That would be very large. So, and I looked it up. I triple looked it up, because I looked it up in 2 or 3 different places to make sure I wasn't telling you wrong, and I'm telling you the correct thing on that. So I got to differ with you on that one. But now he's going on. He has a question. It says, I have a 1972 D35 Martin that used to have 3/8 of a belly bow and was unplayable. It's been setting with the strings off for 2 years, and the top has returned to very nearly flat. The bridge is about 3/8 of an inch high, and straight edge off the fretboard intersects the bridge about 3/16 inch up. So I'm pretty sure I need to reset the neck. If I reset the neck and put light gauge strings on it, will the lower angle be enough to prevent the belly bulge? Okay. Well, Mike, I say no. I say no, it won't be enough. Because if your belly bow had pulled up that much and now it's come back down, that's akin to using steam or humidity or whatever to bring it down. I mean, it's similar to doing that. You can't fix those kinds of problems that way. I'm sorry, you just can't do it. I mean, you can believe you can, and the forums will tell you you can, but you cannot do it. You have to fix it mechanically because it will pull back eventually. If it pulled up there once, it'll pull up there again. I guarantee you, ask me how I know. I used to try to fix those things, the ways that the so-called experts will tell you to fix them. They don't work. They will always, if a wood pulls into that position one time, I guarantee you the second time it'll pull in it even easier because it has a memory and it wants to go where it's comfortable and it will go back there. So if you don't redo your bridge and your bridge plate area or fix the braces that are broke or whatever the problem is, if you don't fix that problem, you're going to have the problem again. That's point number one. Point number two is you definitely want to fix that problem before you do a neck reset. If you do a neck reset and now you got the problem again and now you pull it back down, now your neck's set at the wrong angle. So fix the problem. That's why I always get on my high horse about neck resets. Fix the problem. Don't do a neck reset, fix the problem. Then if you still have a problem, do a neck reset. I'm not opposed to neck resets, folks. I'm not opposed to them. You've seen me do them. I got no problem with doing a neck reset when it's required. That's the key to it. I'm not kidding you. I've seen it many, 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 many times. People just do neck resets because they don't know what else to do. You need to fix the problem. There's a reason why it's doing what it's doing, and you got to fix that problem. Sorry to get on such a high horse about it, but it's just the way it is. And that's I would say of all the things I've known and done in the 40 years, that's the one right there. I think it actually aggravates me because I see it just done wrong all the time. And people just instantly go to a neck reset when they didn't fix the problem to begin with. And the problem will just get worse again, and then they'll have to do another neck reset. I've seen guitars, and I've heard other repairmen tell me, yeah, that's the second neck reset I did on that guitar. Well, if you'd have just fixed it right the first time, you wouldn't have had to do the first neck reset. So there you go. That's me. I'm off the high horse, and I'm down off the soapbox. But seriously, that's a huge problem in this industry. Huge problem. Ray Lamoy, what do you do for fret indicators on the edge of the fretboard? Oh, so those little position markers on the edge. You can buy plastic side dots. You can buy those from like StuMac, and it comes in a long, long plastic dowel that's really skinny, and that's what it is. It's just a plastic dowel that's really skinny. And then you just, you drill your hole, you poke it in there, and then you cut it off. Drill your hole, poke it in there, cut it off. That's probably the easiest way. On the custom instruments that I build, I make my own wooden ebony dowels, very tiny wooden dowels, and I do the same technique then. But I just make them out of ebony rather than plastic. So you can do it either way. Now, making those little tiny dowels down to a 1/16 of an inch, that ain't no easy job. I put them in the lathe, and I use sandpaper on both sides of them and sand them like this. And that's the only way you can keep them from bending and wanting to break, is you have to put your fingers on both sides with sandpaper, and you just go back and forth like that until you get them sanded down to the size you want. That's how I do it. Probably a better way, but that's how I do it. Michael 2X username says, will the rental apartment and retreat not be available during the hiatus? No, it will be available. And yes, that is the one thing that I will, work on. In other words, if somebody says, look, I want to come, in May and I'm on my hiatus and they want to bring me an instrument, I will take the time to fix that instrument while they wait at the rental retreat. So that's the only kind of instrument work I'll be doing during my hiatus is people that come here, stay here, and bring an instrument. I'll fix it. That always gets top priority. So there you go. I will do that. It will be available, and you can do that. David Davidson. That name sounds familiar, as in a bluegrass band. I don't know if it's the same David Davidson. I imagine that's a fairly common name, but there is a bluegrass band, and I could have told you the name of it if I wasn't thinking about it. Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't tell you. He may go by David Davidson now. I kind of think he does. But anyway, he's a very good bluegrass band. I was friends with those guys years ago. I used to know them all very well. Marty was the bass player, and I was real good friends with him. If anybody can think of the name of that band, let me know. What is the thickness of your small palette knife that you use for removing bridges? I bought one on Amazon that seems about the same size as you, but it seems really thick. When I went to work on my bridge. Great job with Cash, sounded really good. Well, thank you, David. I don't know. Let's see how thick it is. Let me set this, make sure it's on 0. It's on 0. Mine is 34 thousandths of an inch thick. So this knife here. And I can tell you for sure that you do want them stiffer than flexible. I mean, flexible, this one's flexible. There's no question it's flexible. But you want them stiff rather than real flexible. If it's real flexible, you'll kink it, bend it. Ask me how I know. I guarantee you'll kink it and bend it trying to get it under there. So you do want it fairly stiff. This one just happens to be that thickness. Again, I'll check it again. 34 thousandths roughly. 33 and a half that time, so if you're counting. But anyway, good luck to you on that. Mark Parker. By the way, I don't have that on the products I use page because I haven't found one like the one I have, and I'm afraid to recommend one of those because they could be too flexible, they could be too thick, and so I don't have one of those to know whether I would recommend it or not. So anyway, Mark Parker, is your son on the Horse Channel Emery's husband? Yes, Emery and my son JR are married, and in fact, I kind of hooked him up. Back years ago, Emery's mother, Renee, started playing bass at the local jam sessions, and then so I started using her in my band since the bass player I used to have lived up in St. Louis, and he really didn't want to come down here this far. So I started using Emery's mother, Renee Caudill, in my band to play bass, and then I got to know Emery, et cetera, and so forth, and then I kind of made the suggestion, although they'll tell you that I didn't set this up, but I kind of think I did. I told JR, I said, man, if I was you, I'd go after Emery. And one long after that, they were together, so there you go. But anyway, see, you didn't know I was also a matchmaker. At least that's my story. That's my side of the story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay, Clyde Lewis, he says, and I see Clyde's name a lot in the comments and things, so thank you, Clyde. He says, Cash is doing a great job. Fine, young man. Jerry, will you be using any of the wood from these trees in your workshop? Really enjoyed the video you made a few years ago of your homemade bandsaw on wheels there. Yeah, Clyde, I probably won't be using them on instruments, but I do plan to saw them up. And speaking of those logs, here's the time to show you this. There's the pile. That's quite a pile of logs, and those are bigger than they look. I don't know if I can't really tell what you. I'm not sure which one the biggest one is. I think that one on the left, the bigger one on the left, about halfway up, I think that's one of the bigger ones there. I would say that's at least 2 foot in diameter. They're really bigger logs than they look like. The smaller ones, I'm going to say, are 16 inches to 18 inches, somewhere in there. So they're all big logs, and most of those are walnut. The one going crossways is elm. The one on the ground is elm crossways, and then there's another great big elm on the other side that's almost as big as that big walnut. It's pretty big too. So I'm planning to saw elm for the first time. I've never sawn elm on the sawmill, so it'll be a new experience. Let's see. Moving back here. Let me find where I'm at. Paul Akers says, what kind of clamp do you use on an internal brace install on the top of the guitar that is closest to the tail block? Do you have the Stumac scissor jacks or, well, I have a number of things that I use. I mean, if I have to reach way back through the sound hole, I have some special made wooden clamps that I've made, and I can put wedges in there. In other words, they're just a big C wooden thing out of plywood, and I just slide it back in there, and you know, I can put the inside up on the brace, and then I can put wedges in on the top of the guitar to pull the brace up. You know, so I just make them out of plywood, some C-type. They're not even clamps; they're just big letter C, pretty much. So I do that if I'm working on the guitar. If the guitar top is off, well then I have one of those Go bar systems that I made. In other words, it's a plywood bottom and a plywood top with boards between them on the corners to hold them stiff, and then I have the little bendable pieces of wood that I stick in there, and they're bent like this, and the bending pressure of that piece of wood pushes the clamp, or pushes the brace down on the guitar top. I can't talk. But it's a little awkward to show you that. I could show you that, I guess. But really, you could look up Go bar systems on YouTube and probably find it. I think that's what they go by, is what they're called. But yeah, you know, if you got to reach way back in there, I do have some very long C clamps, but they're not probably long enough to reach the back. So in that case, I would probably just make something custom out of a piece of plywood and stick it back there. Now the problem you'll have with that even is getting it through the sound hole. Sometimes, yeah, it's just hard. It's not easy being me. You should know that. I don't know. I hope that helps you. Henry Miller says the gyros or a gyros dovetail razor saw, he says it's not rated very highly on YouTube. People complain that the blade slips out of the brass. And, you know, do I have that problem? You know, is basically what he's going. Well, sort of, kind of, but I stand by this is a very good saw. I stand by that. And the reason is, you got to realize, and I don't know how to say this without offending somebody, but a lot of people just don't know how to use their tools, you know, and that's just the bottom line truth of it. And this is not a saw for sawing a log off, you know. This is a very delicate saw. It's only 9/1000ths of an inch thick. Let me double check that. I think I'm telling you correct. No, I'm wrong. It's 8/1000ths of an inch thick. 8/1000ths. That's just about 3 human hairs, 4 human hairs, somewhere in there. I mean, it's really, really thin. And because of that, you know, you don't go putting it under huge stress loads. And so if you're trying to saw through some big 1-inch board with this is the wrong saw to use. And when you get down that tight, it is going to probably pull it out of this holder. But if you're sawing off a brace on a guitar, or if you're sawing even through the fret on an ebony fretboard, and you take your time, it works just fine. Now, when I do get it pinched like that, when it does want to pull, then I wax it with some paraffin wax. Paraffin's my preference on that. You could use beeswax, but beeswax is a little stickier. Paraffin wax is very slick. And so I put paraffin wax on this and slide it through there, and I don't have any trouble with it. So regardless, again, of the experts, if you use it properly, it's a great saw. And I use it, and I'm not saying I've never had that happen. I have had it happen, but I'm usually pushing it to its limits when you do that. So it's a delicate saw. It's not meant for heavy-duty stuff. So I stand by the fact that I think it's a very good tool for the purpose that I use it. James Akers, good morning, Jerry. My question is, would you suggest that a person start off with a kit to build their first mandolin or guitar, or does it even make a difference? Well, yeah, I didn't start off with a kit. I started off just jumping right in with both feet, but I've got a lot of experience with a lot of things. Growing up, I just had my hands in everything all the time. So in a way, it wasn't my first rodeo, you might say. I mean, I had already built a lot of things out of wood, and of course, I was very mechanically oriented. I had, did everything you could imagine with mechanics also. So the combination of the two things, I think, gave me a slight advantage, or, a leg up, if you will. So I would say that for your average person, I would say a kit would probably be the way to go on your first one. I would also highly recommend, again, the Roger Siminoff books on building a mandolin. Even if you're building a guitar, I would still recommend highly the Roger Siminoff books on building a mandolin. No, they don't tell you everything you need to know about building a guitar, but a lot of the techniques that you learn in that book will work for just about anything you want to build. So there you go. Moving on, Alan Dust. Great job, Cash, he says. Just wondering if veneer saw would be a good choice for cutting the back off a guitar. The blade thickness is, and he had that on there, but it didn't bummer. It didn't print. I don't know why. When I copied it, I must have missed it somehow or cut it off or something. I think he said the blade thickness was 28 thousandths or something like that. It was in that neighborhood, 28,000, 30,000, somewhere, something like that. I remember the comment. So anyway, I kind of think that's a little bit thick. I mean, this is what I use, and it's 8 thousandths. So that sounds a little thick to me. Could you do it? Probably. Could you make it work okay? Possibly, probably. But I think I'd probably just invest in getting a smaller saw. And, this is what I use when I do it. And that, when you talk an 8 thousandths of an inch, that's really thin. I don't know. You can't see how thin that is, but that is really thin. I mean, it's super, super thin. You can see this one's bent a little bit. I've kinked it a time or two, but you can buy replacement blades, and I do have a replacement blade or two for it. All right, moving on to the next thing. I don't know how to pronounce the username. Wolfieu812, WOLFIEU 812. What would make the guitar strings go sharp after it sits overnight? When I'm done playing for the day, the guitar is still in tune, and I put it away on the stand. Any thoughts? It's got me stumped. I would think, if anything, the strings would go flat. Well, in a lot of cases, they do go flat, and it depends on the instrument. For whatever reason, the mandolins I build are absolutely black and white. Every one of them that I've ever remember using, all of them went sharp overnight. I don't know why, but they do. The next day, when you get them out, they're sharp. And every mandolin I've ever built has been that way. So I think I attribute it to humidity changes and atmospheric pressure changes is what I attribute it to. But I do not know the real absolute 1,000% reason. I just attribute it to that. If you got a better answer, put it in the comments. But I say it's atmospheric and or humidity changes. And it does seem to be the overnight is part of the trick there, because the next day they usually are sharp. So you're not alone. It is fairly common. In fact, it's pretty common with most instruments that they'll change, not necessarily always go sharp. Some of them will go flat, and it just depends on the instrument. And I think it depends on the weather and those kinds of things too. Rick Tedder is the last question I have here. It says, hey, Jerry, it's been some time since I contacted you, but I came up with this question. Have you ever used fish glue? And if so, does it compare to hide glue or Titebond? The truthful answer is I have never used fish glue. And I'm sorry, so I have no way to compare it or tell you anything about it. If anyone has got some good information and you want to put it in the comments, feel free. Okay, I am sure we're probably getting close to out of time. No, we got 12 minutes left, according to my clock here. About 10 minutes, actually. So I'm going to scroll back up here and see if I can find where the first comments or questions are in today's live comment section. And again, I'm looking for those question marks in the front of your question. So if I pass you up, and I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the question marks. Prolo Tomasi says, would lignum vitae work for nuts and saddles? Sure. I mean, it will. Would it be my choice? It would be fine for the saddle, I think. I don't think there'd be any question. It'd be perfectly... I said that wrong. Sorry. Let me back up. It would be fine for the nut. I don't think I'd have any problem with using it for the nut. For the saddle, I think bone is a better choice. I think bone and antler is a little bit better than any kind of wood. Ebony, I have used ebony, and it's just not as good as bone and antler. So I would say fine for the nut, no problem at all, but not so much on the saddle. That's just my opinion, and I do base that on experience, because I have done it. Gary Young, do you have a video on how to make your neck removal jig? No, I don't. Maybe I could do a video if I get time, on showing how it's made. I won't necessarily. Now, by the way, someone actually sent most of that to me, and I redid it to suit me. I mean, they sent me this thing, and I thought it was fine. I could have used it the way they had it, but it just was much more powerful and much better suited to the kind of neck removals I do by the modifications I made. One of those modifications is the part that goes under the heel. I made that a big, thick steel bar, so it can't bend and torque. Like the wood can actually bend and torque when you make it out of wood. Now, if you make it out of heavy enough wood, probably not, but then you're getting so big and bulky. So I made it out of steel. I think my steel is probably a good 1/2 inch thick and 3/4 to an inch wide, and about, 4, 5, 6 inches long, just wide enough to get past the neck and have the bolts go down through it. So anyway, basically it's just a watch this. I'll be right back.
Opal's got a little shop, coffee, tea, and soda pop, written on the faded window sign. Ruby and Pearl are her best friends. There you'll find the three of them, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30.
Yep, I always hate to cut Renee off. That was Renee Caudill. She passed away of brain cancer. She's the one I told you was Emery's mother, and she started out playing bass in my band, and she was just a wonderful singer as well. Anyway, this is what it looks like. And you can see here, it's just a piece of plywood. This needs to be wide enough across here to go, to fit the waist of most guitars. And this piece here has to be big enough to fit the, extension, fretboard extension of most guitars. And then you can see here this piece of steel I use, and I put leather there. And, it's really a fairly simple thing. The person that sent this to me sent me this piece, I think, and this piece. These are the pieces I reused from what they sent me. But I did replace this part here, and I did make some modifications up here, make this bigger, because I've had plenty of guitars where this would barely fit or it wouldn't fit at all. So anyway, I modified it, but it really does work really well. I put some tape on here to keep from scratching things up, but that's not necessary. I mean, I got some tape here too, just to play it safe. I got some leather, by the way, here, you know. So that's how it's made. It's not really very complicated. And, you know, essentially you just keep lifting right here until you just lift it out. These here, you don't tighten super tight. You just want them good and snug. But these here, this will just lift it right out. Okay. Let's see. The next question. Rob Collins. What are the best woods to make an acoustic guitar out of? Well, you know, Rob, on this one, I gotta be honest, if you ask 20 people, you'll get 20 different answers. And for me, I like the crisper sound, so I like good hardwoods for the backs and sides, as opposed to mahogany. Even though mahogany is classified as a hardwood, it's a softer hardwood, if you will. It's one of the softest hardwoods that are used in musical instruments. So mahogany is a little soft for me, though it makes great guitars. I mean, it's hard to argue with a D18. They're great sounding guitars. So I'm not, you know, I don't want anybody to think I'm some kind of a snob on rosewood or whatever. So for me, rosewood, Padauk is the one that I typically use. Padauk is just a great sounding wood for guitars, in my opinion. Rosewood's awesome. And I'm sure there are plenty of other great sounding hardwoods. My brother built his out of that leopard wood, I think it is, and there's another one that's called lace wood that looks basically the same to me. I don't know, but anyway, I think his was called leopard wood, and it's got a great sound. It's a great sounding guitar. But I will tell you, the leopard wood is the splinteriest wood you'll ever get around in your life. You cannot even pick a board up without getting a splinter in that wood. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. You'll just get splinters left and right constantly with that leopard wood. So if you can put up with that, that's a great choice too. It's a beautiful, beautiful wood. But anyway, yeah, Rob, it's impossible to give you a black and white answer on that because so many people are looking for so many different things. But for my money, and especially because you can get Padauk at most of the hardwood lumber stores, Padauk is a great choice. It's hard to build a bad guitar with Padauk if it's quarter sawn. Now, you got to look through the stack. A lot of times they won't be quarter sawn, and you want to get the quarter sawn piece. Mary Mom says, have you been over to see Oliver? Well, actually, he came over to see me. They brought him over here on the farm, and they took a few pictures of him over here and stuff. And yeah, I haven't actually had time to go over and see him. That's the truth of it. I am busy, busy, busy. My wife has gone over there. My daughter's gone over there. In fact, the video that I linked to in today's video, if you watch that, at the very tail end, the girl feeding the apple to the horse, that is my oldest daughter, Lisa. And Lisa is a teacher for the Rockwood School District up in Eureka, Missouri. So she was down feeding Oliver an apple. So anyway, that's at the very tail end of the video. You'll see my daughter, Lisa. So that answers that question. Moving on, Terry Beeson. Linear inch measurements have no width, so could be no measurement of the sandpaper grit. Square inch, 1 inch is used to measure the number of sand grains that will fit in the area. Yes, I totally 100% agree. I learned that back in, I don't know, junior high shop, I think. We used to have great shop classes in the school I went to. They don't have many more, but as soon as I could take shop classes, I started taking them. And I'll digress and tell you, because I'm kind of proud of this story. I mean, I'm bragging, I guess. But, you know, I told you I started mechanical things when I was very young. I mean, my dad had a landscaping business, so I started rebuilding lawnmower engines when I was around the 4th grade, and I'm not kidding. So when I got into, I think it was 7th grade, might have been 8th grade, power mechanics class, Well, the project for the class was you had to completely tear down a lawnmower engine and completely rebuild it. Now that meant, new rings, honing the cylinders, grinding the valves, everything you could do to an engine, pretty much. So, um, it's supposed to be a whole semester long. You had the whole semester to do your engine, and that was your grade. Well, I'm not exaggerating. You probably think I'm kidding or exaggerating or it couldn't have happened, but I promise you, I started on Monday of that week, and on Friday I was finished. I was completely finished. And so, I did it all on my own. I never asked the instructor anything. And so on that Friday, I told him I'm done, and he's going, "There ain't no way you could be done." He's going, like, "That's just impossible." And I said, "I'm telling you, I'm done." And he goes, and he starts quizzing me. He said, "Did you?" I said, "Yes." And I set the gap to 9,000. So I did this and I did that and I did this and I did that. And I said, I honed the cylinders and da 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 da. And he's going, "Really?" I said, "I'm telling you, I did it all." And he's going, "There's no way." So anyway, so then he goes, "Well, then I'll bet you that thing will never start." And he says, I'll tell you what, I'll bet you it'll start on the first pull." He's going, "There ain't no way." He says, and I said, "I'll bet you $10 on it. You want to bet $10? And he's going, "Okay." So I was no dummy. I knew how to do these things. You have to understand. I grew up doing this. So I primed it and everything and made sure everything was working real good. I knew it had good spark and, all that. So I put back then, you got to remember too, that it wasn't all recoil start. A lot of them had a rope you wrapped around it. So I wrapped a little extra winding around there. I gave it one pull and that sucker started right up, and he like to died. So guess what? I got to do the rest of the whole semester. I got to help the other kids working on their on their engines. So anyway, I don't know how I got off on that, but it was just a fond memory that I had there. I hope you don't mind me sharing little tales like that. But I swear to you, it's 100% true. I didn't stretch the truth on any of that. Let's see. It looks like R. Michael Boyer. "Jerry, how long did it take you to give Cash such good timing? I have timing issues too, and looking for good video, written instructions. If you know of some, please share." Well, Michael, no, I don't know of any particular specific instructions on timing. Now, of course, I cover that. This is going to sound self-serving, but of course I covered in, pretty good detail in the mandolin training that I have online. So I covered in pretty good detail there, and I talk about the different kinds of timing. See, I think that's the thing that I think especially non-musicians don't get. Most people, or even the casual musicians, don't get. I think that they think timing is you don't speed up, you don't slow down, you play tick tock to the metronome. That's what they consider timing. But it's much bigger than that. It really is. There's a bunch of issues with timing. Sure, you've got that. You've got your metronome timing, and of course that's important. I'm not saying it's not, but it's much bigger than that. Cash's timing issues were quite a few, actually. In fact, he really didn't have any of the timing issues correct. I mean, not any of them, really. He wasn't playing like this, and he wasn't, like, when he would start singing, he'd be cross beat to his music, and in other words, you're supposed to start singing on the one and the cross time. The other issue is that there's this, and again, I don't know all the musical terms because I'm totally self-taught, but I know what's right and what's wrong. And like when you're singing, then you have, and I think somebody called it a rest in the last time I mentioned this, but you have, so additional beats and additional notes that come after the end of your line when you're singing. You've got some fill there, if you will. That's what I call it. I just call it fill notes. There's some fill notes that come before you're able to turn the corner and go to the next verse. See, I think of it literally like walking around the square block of a town. Like this first side is your first verse or whatever, and you sing it, and you have to sing it, and you have to play it out until you get to the corner. You can't cut across the corner, which is what a lot of people do in their timing. They as soon as they're finished singing, they're on to the next line, and they didn't let it play out, you know. And some people I think called that a rest. I don't know the musical terms. I mean, I'm just being honest with you. But I can show you and I can tell you what you need to do. That's not a problem. I can tell you that. But I just don't know the proper musical terms. Anyway, so he had that issue too. He was cutting corners. He wasn't letting it play out, and then, you know, and then we'd be out of time with him there too and have to catch up. You know, he really didn't have anything right on the timing. I mean, like nothing. And that's what was so sad. You know, I'm not picking on the kid. You know, I'm just telling you this is just facts, and he knows it too. I mean, we talked about all of this, of course, and his grandmother heard me talking to him about it all too, because here's the bottom line, and I tell this to my students, and I tell it to every single student, and that is that if you're not in time, you are not playing music. All you're doing is making noise. That's it. You can think you're playing music, but you're not. You're just making noise. Period. Because it's not music until it's in time. You know, and you know where the timing thing really, really, really hit home with me? And I mean, I knew it was always important, don't get me wrong, but where it really hit home with me was when I had my recording studio. And you'd have a good band come in, and they'd do take one. And I'm making this up, but say it was 3 minutes and 23 seconds on take one. Well, they say, I didn't like that take. I want to do it again. I say, okay, fine. The next one was 3 minutes and 23 seconds. I'm going, wow. You know, I mean, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it would alter a second. You know, sometimes it'd be a half a second. I mean, sometimes, you know, and it might even alter 2 or 3 seconds. They say, well, you know, we played that too slow. We need to speed it up. Well, you know, they speed it up and it'd be 2 or 3 seconds faster. You know what I'm saying? So that timing thing really hit home when I was running the recording studio. Because, man, these guys, I mean, it's just like a clock. It's just like a clock. So if it's not in time, you are not playing music. Regardless of what you think you're doing, you're not playing music. You know, so, and I drive that home to my students big time. And the other thing, and I'm not picking on poor little Cash, but every single time he'd break time, I'd stop him. I'd say, nope, that ain't working. We got to do it again. So we'd start over. And then, like, if he didn't make it the second time, well, then the third time, I'd help him through it. I'd say, now this time, you stay in time with me, and we'll do it this way, you know. And so to answer that long answer to that short question is that that might have been the 5th lesson the day we recorded that. I think that was the 5th lesson, something like that. Might have been the 6th, but I think it was probably the 5th. Might have only been the 4th even, because I lose track. I don't keep track of all this stuff. But I would say 5th. Terry Beeson, akin to gauge in inverse. I don't know what that comment means, Terry. I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay, moving on. Rochelle Whalen, that's my daughter. She's the one that lives in Ohio. Dad, if those are walnut boards, I want some to make more charcuterie boards. I meant to mention that earlier, that I know that a lot of that's going to go to charcuterie stuff. And my daughter, Rochelle, there is, yeah. Well, actually, not only those, but the stumps that are still in the ground, the pressure of the tree makes those stumps really curly. And those, if we can get those stumps out of the ground, there's where your charcuterie boards ought to be coming out of. Not only that, but you can make some awesome gun stocks out of those stumps. Oh my gosh, you're talking about some beautiful wood. Yeah. So if you guys want to come up here and hand dig those stumps out and get yourself some great walnut wood. Anyway, no, it's hard to get them out of the ground, but if you can get them out of the ground, that's some of your very best wood right there is in the stumps. Okay, moving on. Steve Mercure. Will new nylon strings on a classical guitar stretch after being first installed? Only about 3 miles. Yeah, they stretch a lot. Yeah, classical guitar strings probably stretch more than any kind of guitar strings. You know, I'm not a classical guitar expert, just to be clear, but I've put them on quite a few guitars, and they don't ever quit stretching. They do quit stretching, but it just seems like they never quit. So yeah, you're experiencing, or what you're experiencing is very normal. It does stretch. Travis the Fixer, good morning. Have the Martins arrived yet? No, they haven't. I think he spelled that as Martians. But anyway, the Martin birds have not. I've been watching for them every single day, so you can bet I'm looking for them. But I do have their houses cleaned out, and I'm ready for them. I need to put some more houses up. I really do. I think I got 12 up, and I think they only used about 6 of them last year. But I'm afraid they'll overwhelm the 12 this year, because a lot of times they bring back more, you know, with them. Rob Collins, what types of wood make great guitar sound like mahogany, rosewood, etc.? Well, we kind of answered that earlier, but yeah, the Padauk is one of my favorites. It's got, here's the bottom line, Rob, and everybody else. I mean, seriously, go into the hardwood lumber store. Don't just take my word for it. Pick up any board you want. Pick it up, learn how to tap on it, and listen to that note, and listen to the sustain. If it has a real clear note and it sustains really well, it'll probably make a great guitar. And if you like the looks of it, then get it. You know what I'm saying? And make a guitar out of it, and you'll be fine. As long as it does make that clear note and it rings really good, you're going to have a good guitar. And I like Padauk. In fact, that's what you'd want to really do, is you want to compare. Pick this one up, tap on it, pick that one up, tap on it, and go, oh, that rings a whole lot better than this. You know what I'm saying? But you got to learn how to do that. And I've shown it. I'm going to show you again, though. Actually, I didn't even know this was up there. I'm pretty sure this is Purple Heart. I think it is. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not good with colors, but I think this is Purple Heart based on the way it looks. And it's crazy heavy. I mean, this is really heavy. You would not believe how much this little tiny board weighs. It's heavy. I mean, it's so heavy, I don't know if I can hold it with my 2 fingers. Oh my God, it is so heavy. Okay, I've never, as far as I know, I've never tapped on a piece of this. I don't know where this came from. I think my brother Scott might have left it here. But anyway, listen to this. That long. I mean, that rings forever. Right there. That long. So if it does that, and you notice where I held it. You notice I didn't hold it up here. You notice I didn't hold it here. I held it like right there. And you find that sweet spot. And it depends how long the board is and all that. You just kind of get used to doing it. I don't know if those this has got a very low sound to it. I don't know if that low sound is coming through the microphone. I can't tell. But man, does it ring forever. So this would make a great choice. This is Purple Heart. Or at least I think it's Purple Heart. I truly don't know. I never saw this before, so my brother must have left it here when he was building his instruments. Sorry, this piece here, now this is Padauk, but it's much shorter board. So it's going to have a much higher note because the fact that it's much shorter. Now again, I'm going to grab this one a little bit higher up. It's kind of a percentage of the length. So I'm grabbing this a little higher up. Now listen to this. This is going to have a really high note. It's going to ring shorter because it's shorter. But anyway, did you hear how high that note is? It sounds like you're tapping on metal. I mean, it really does sound like you're tapping on metal. So my point is, tap on some boards. Go out and pick them up and just tap on them. And if they look at you funny while you're doing it, just go, I like to listen to boards. Anyway, that's the truth of it, and that's the best way to answer the question. Almost any good ringing board will make a good sounding instrument. Gordon Bartlett says, if you slab the walnut, the highly figured pieces could be sold to instrument builders online, provide small source of income. Yes, I realize that, Gordon. I really do, and I'm not ruling it out, but honestly, I just don't know if I'll get that far. Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it. I got so many irons in the fire already. I should have my head examined. I mean, everybody looks at me. The people, like even the people I play music with, they go, "You are nuts. Why aren't you retired? Why aren't you just sitting down?" And, I mean, like, that's just not me. So I'm just so busy already. I can barely say grace over all of it. So yeah, whether that happens or not, I don't know if it's going to happen, Gordon, but I totally am aware that it could happen. And whether I get to it or not is the question. Where are all of the thumbs ups? Thank you, Scott Roberts. Yeah, I'm wondering that too. Click the thumbs up, guys. Help me out here a little bit. By the way, and I hope nobody takes this wrong, but as I was creating the video this morning here to, out on YouTube to schedule the live thing, it asked me, do I want to have mid-run ads? What are those things called? I don't know. Anyway, the ads that pop up in the middle of the live thing, and I always elect no. Because I know that it would make me more money if I said yes, but I just don't do it on this. So any help you can give me is appreciated because I'm trying to help you guys, So give me the thumbs up. If you want to make a donation, I'm not going to be opposed to that. It never, Anyway, we all support each other. That's the way I look at it. Okay, moving on. Burfoot, just built a fiddle but am terrible with finishes. What do you recommend? Well, I seriously recommend the True Oil Gunstock varnish. I think that's one of the best varnishes you can get. You can't hardly screw it up except the fact that you put it on too thick. You cannot put True Oil Gunstock varnish on too thin. You can't do it. Put it on as thin, way thinner than you think you should put it on, and you'll be just fine. Put it on real thin, put on multiple coats as thin as you can put them on, and you'll be just fine. It's a great, great finish. It's acoustically very good too, so you'll like it a lot. You can put it on in any kind of method you want. You can use your fingers and put it on. A lot of people do that. You can use cotton swabs or something, or some kind of swab. I don't know if cotton's the right one, but you can use some kind of swab and put it on. You can put it on with cloth, you can put it on with brushes, and you can put it on spraying, but very, very, very few people put it on with spray. I do put it on with spray, but I also have worked at it, and I've got a good technique for putting on with spray, and it's like one time across, and do not go back across it. If you do, it will run. Okay, so anyway, moving on. Somebody just did a super chat. Well, thank you very, very kindly. I really do very much appreciate it. Steve Mercure, thank you very much, Steve. We're getting close to the end here. We're way long on time. I'm sorry. Paul Walton, can you show, we got 196 viewers, by the way. Paul Walton says, can you show the back of the mandolin neck at the headstock and describe how you shape it? From rough sawing. Yeah. Well, I have an advantage on this, or at least it's an advantage for me. You can see how it's curled up right here. That is the curl of my thickness sander. So what I'm doing is I'm sliding this in under the sander, and then that rotating drum makes that curl for me. So, and then all I do is just round it around to that curl on the backside here with files and, you know, scrapers and different things. So that's how I do it. And the advantage of this is it makes it a little bit beefier right here. So you don't have to, when you put your truss rod in, if you put a truss rod in, this one does not have a truss rod. When you put the truss rod in, it makes it beefier right here, so it's less likely to break right here, which you've seen that happen on at least a couple occasions over the last year or two here on this channel. Not by my instruments, but by other instruments. Okay, moving on. Let's see. We'll try to get through these. I think we're about done. Zappa. Hello, Zappa. I was wondering where you were. Jerry, won't that tree wood need to be dried before anyone can use it? Of course, yes, it will. And it takes a long time to dry. Yeah. Although you can speed. Boy, the super chats are pouring in. Thank you so very much. I really do appreciate it. I'm sorry I mentioned it because I don't like to mention it, honestly. I don't really like to beg for things. But thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate it. Bill Hyder and Michael Buss. But anyway, Zappa's point about it, it does take a long time to dry. If you put it on a shelf in your shop, you know, just air drying it, yeah, you can count on I would say a minimum of a year. And I think they generally say it's a year per inch of thickness. So if it's 2 inches thick, you're probably talking 2 years. Now, if you cut it into shorter lengths and, you know, and if you cut, like if you're making book match things, well then if you pre-cut it ahead of time, it'll dry much faster, of course. So the thicker it is, the longer it takes to dry. Now you can speed those things up. And I actually dried some in my attic of my old workshop. I haven't done it in this workshop yet because I just haven't had the need or the time. And but you can speed it up. You want to keep it out of the sun, but put it in a good hot place. And if you can put a fan on it, that's even better. It'll, you know, circulate the air and it'll dry much quicker, like in a hot attic. But you want to check it quite often with a moisture meter. And you can, moisture meters are affordable now. They're, I don't know, anywhere from $30 to $100. You can get a real nice moisture meter. I think mine's around $50, something like that. But anyway, you want to check it quite often with a moisture meter. And when it gets down to about 6%, then you want to take it out of there. You know, maybe even possibly 8%, but I would say around 6% would be ideal. That's going to be it for today, guys. Thank you so much for supporting me, for being so nice, and thank you again so much for all the wonderful comments for Cash. I know that had to make his day. I'll see Cash this evening, and I'll call him the big star. You know, he'll feel real good, and we'll play some music tonight, and I think he'll even enjoy it more because of all the feedback you guys gave him. So thank you very much. We will probably see you on Monday. Be watching for that video this evening, and I'll get it out as quick as I can get it out. That's the only promise I can make. We'll see you then.